Joining us today. Thanks, Megan. On behalf of the organizing team, we are delighted to welcome you to this webinar. Please feel free to tell us who you are and where you're joining in from. While we are at that, I'll quickly use the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Ozioma Uzodinma, and I am joining in from France. I am a program manager at the Synergist, and for the Guide MRD project, my work focuses mainly on patient and public engagement, and it's a pleasure to connect with you all. Today's webinar is the first of an educational series, and our objective is to inform you about the Guide MRD project and its vision for early detection of cancer relapse. We will highlight the challenges and gaps in the current healthcare system and explore the co-created ideal healthcare pathway for cancer monitoring after curative treatment. And then we will have a moment to engage with you on how we may shape better solutions. I would like to thank our panelists as well for joining us today. Today's panelists consist of partners of the Guide MRD project and a special guest who will be bringing an external perspective. We have the project scientific coordinator, Dr. Klaus Pantel, the project's co-leader, Luigi Ravagnan, members of the patient advisory board, Nicolene Earhart, Laspa Nicolaisen, and Maria Luisa Pagano, and our special guest speaker, Tanya Spanic, the executive director of Europa Donna. They will be bringing their diverse perspectives and will share their hopes for the project. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So before we get started, we have a few housekeeping rules to ensure we have a smooth and orderly session. We encourage you to be present and engaged. Please switch off your mics. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat. The session will be recorded for note-taking purposes and to maximize our reach. So please, let's make this session interesting together. We also have a live translation tool. Next slide, please, which will allow you to read captions in your preferred language. Instructions on how you may access this tool is on the screen. So feel free to just follow so you can access it. And also, as you can see on my background, is the POF banner. For those of you who do not know POF, POF is a community of multicultural and multidisciplinary thought leaders coming together to shape a better health future for patients and with patients. So the Guide MRD project has been on an exciting journey with POF. We organized an in-person session last year, and today we have the opportunity to organize this virtual webinar. And in the future, we will have more virtual sessions. To give you a quick overview of today's 1-hour session, we will begin with an introduction to the Guide MRD project. Then we will zoom into one of the project's recent outputs, which is the current versus ideal healthcare pathway. Next, we will move to the panel discussion, after which we will open the floor for audience remarks and questions. Towards the end, we will have a few announcements for you, and then we will close. At this point, I hope you're all excited to dive in. We're now going to have a quick audience poll, just to sense check where we all are regarding the concept of ctDNA testing. So how familiar are you with the concept of using blood tests to detect if there are tiny pieces of cancer in the bloodstream after treatment? Let us know if you are not at all familiar with this, somewhat familiar, or very familiar with this. Oh, great. We have different kinds of people with different knowledge levels on this, which makes it interesting. Perfect. Okay. So for those who clicked on very familiar, all right, you can leave us now. We don't need you here. I'm just joking. Amazing to have you with us. When we open the floor for the audience remarks, we encourage you to share your knowledge about it and your thoughts on the project. For those who clicked on somewhat familiar, not familiar, this session will help you understand the concept better. And we encourage you to ask questions or share your thoughts when we open the floor for the audience. So with that, I will now hand over to the Guide MRD scientific coordinator, who is also a healthcare provider, to explain to us what the Guide MRD project is all about, its benefits for patients and the healthcare system. Over to you now, Dr. Klaus.
Thank you very much. It's really my pleasure today to give a very quick wrap up what is really the GuideMD project. The next slide, please. So I think we are really looking here for a project that will redefine the standard of care in Europe and beyond. And we are really working on a blood test and validating a blood test for clinical implementation that can tell patients whether they have tumor left in the body after initial therapy or not, and whether they need additional treatment or not. And the project focuses on patients with lung, pancreatic, and colorectal cancer. Next, please. The current standard of care is that after surgery of early stage cancer, some cancer cells may remain in the body, and that's what we call minimal residual disease or MRD. These leftover cells can release tiny elements, so-called circulating tumor DNA, into the blood. And this circulating tumor DNA can be detected with very sensitive methods. The challenge is really to find out which patients have such MRD and which are free of MRD. And the current imaging tests, the radiologic CT scans or MRT scans, are not sensitive enough to detect those, but the blood test might be sensitive enough to detect those traces of cancer in the blood. Next, please. The ctDNA, I think, has really developed very nicely over the last years. It can show which treatment are needed after surgery, so the care can be more personalized. It can be also used to say, can we de-escalate treatment so patients that may not treatment like chemotherapy, which would be, of course, a big advantage. And it gives the patient, therefore, a better chance to stay healthy, feel better, and live longer. Next, please. Right now, the ctDNA testing is not part of the day-to-day clinical practice. There are many ctDNA tests that are actually available, but they work in different ways and they're not all equally accurate. So what's needed is a very good test, and that's what we develop in GuideMD, so that the doctors, patients, and regulators can trust the results. Once we have developed such tests or identify such tests, then I think it can help the doctor to say whether the patient needs additional adjuvant therapy or not. Next, please. So what GuideMD do now specifically, we will compare and rank the best ctDNA tests for detecting MRD and understand how they work in the real-world patient care. We want to create references, which are best practice samples, so the labs can check whether their tests are accurate or not. And then we bring together the stakeholders involved in this effort, which are the doctors, the labs, and last but not least, the patients, to identify which are the challenges and opportunities for the clinical implementation of these tests. Next, please. So what is the expected impact of GuideMD? We want to help people with cancer to live better by reducing the burden of unnecessary or invasive procedures. A blood test is easier than a needle biopsy. And also if we can reduce the treatment because of a negative blood test, that would be also very important. Then we would like to provide a case study showing how reference standards or best practice samples can really work and inform the treatment decision to make sure that the tests work very well from day to day. And I think this can also serve as a blueprint to expand the ctDNA testing also to other conditions and clinical decisions in the future. Next, please. These are the representative multi-stakeholders in the GuideMD. And you can see very nicely that we have a private-public partnership of academic institutions and industry from diagnostic and pharma industry and also providers of reference standards. So all these stakeholders are important to make the GuideMD project a success. Thank you very much. And I think I can now hand over to Chiara and Maria Luisa.
Yes, thank you, Klaus, for this great overview of the project. I am Chiara Antoniani from Lung Cancer Europe, and if we can maybe mute one microphone, please, and also move to the next slide. I will also introduce you to Anna from Digestive Cancer Europe, and together with Ozioma from the Synergists, we support the work of the Patient Advisory Board. So the Patient Advisory Board brings together the lived experience of patients and caregivers affected by lung, colorectal, and pancreatic cancer, that, as you heard before, they are the three disease areas at the core of Guide MRD. And their perspective ensures that the real patient needs and priorities guide really the project, and their role is not symbolic, but they really actively shape the project. In fact, they provide continuous insights, advice, and guidance also to the leadership body. And if you can move to the next slide, I will just show the contribution of the Patient Advisory Board, in particular in this last year. They contributed to several key activities, and for example, they reviewed the study protocols and informed consent forms to make sure they were clear and accessible. At the same time, also they contributed to educational materials in different languages to support the patient recruitment and also shape the patient-facing information on our website. They also provided perspective on the co-creation of ideal healthcare pathway, and I'm gonna dive into it, but also supporting the development of the system map. This is not a piece that we will speak about today, but it was a great exercise to identify the main stakeholders and their role in the adoption of ctDNA into the clinical practice. So as you can see, the Patient Advisory Board is very involved, and they really provide a valuable expertise, and their voice is core and really important at every step of the project. So now, if we can move to the next slides, I will show one of the recent outcomes, that is the current and ideal healthcare pathway. This was a work that was submitted as a formal project deliverable, but then we tried also to translate it in a more accessible formats, for example, infographics or language, to support a wider understanding and use. And in the next slide, I will show you starting from the current pathway. Don't get scared. I will try to accompany you in the different phases. So we took as an example, first of all, I forgot to say that this work of the current and ideal pathway was co-created with a multi-stakeholder approach. So we spoke with 34 patients and healthcare professionals. We also gathered insights from 33 experts, and we also opened this piece for a public consultation, and of course, take into account the inputs from the Patient Advisory Board. In these slides, you see the current treatment. And so it's like looking at the current treatment landscape, and we focus it on a patient living with non-metastatic disease that are treated with curative intent, for example, surgery. So in the risk assessment phase that you see on your left hand side, after the treatment with curative intent, the patients usually undergo adjuvant therapy, because this is a standard precaution, regardless of whether or not any residual cancer disease is detected. So usually what they do is that they meet with, like the patients meet with their oncologist to evaluate the best treatment and options for them to start the adjuvant treatment. During the monitoring phase that you see in the middle, what happens is that people after the adjuvant therapy, they are monitored at either weekly or biweekly based on the treatment option. And after every cycle, the patient and the oncology meet and evaluate the results and decides what to do next. In the recurrence surveillance phase, the treatment pathway can take three possible directions, and you see on top that one of the possible options is that the adjuvant therapy is considered effective, and in this case, the patients may stop the treatment and enter a period of close monitoring. So first, they have between the 3 and 6 months, they have frequent visits And then after that, they enter a more like an annual visit. And usually the monitoring is kept through blood tests and imaging. The second option is that for patients at high risks, clinician may decide to reduce and maintain the treatment, and this can be continued also for a long period of time. And this, of course, is putting the patient at risks of side effects and, of course, an impact on quality of life. And the third option is that recurrence is detected or predicted, and therefore the patient needs to restart the treatment or even a more aggressive therapy. As you can see in this pathway, there are some challenges. The first one being, for example, the toxicity of the adjuvant therapy and especially chemo. And it's also the decision of one size fits all approach because everyone is taking the adjuvant therapy. The second challenge is the fact that using imaging techniques there is often a lack of precision to detect recurrence earlier, especially in the absence of symptoms. And this, of course, can also delay the identification of the discovery and therefore requires more aggressive interventions afterwards. And also, if we look in this scenario, we know that the patients would need a supportive care. But what we heard from interviews is that this is not always the case. When we look on our right side, we also see many stakeholders involved in the current pathway. But what we realized is that there is a big fragmentation in the healthcare environment, and this one size fits all approach is not beneficial for the patients, especially because this creates a big burden. So if we now move into the next slides, we will see an ideal pathway that was co-created with all the stakeholders. And again, we keep focusing on people living with no metastatic disease that are treated with a curative intent. But the difference is that after receiving the curative intent, people would be prescribed a liquid biopsy. So, like at the beginning in the risk assessment phase, you see immediately that the pathway then divides. So, after the ctDNA, and based on the results of the ctDNA, then the pathway can take two possible scenarios. If you saw on the bottom, there is no MRD detected. So after reconfirming the ctDNA results with a second test, the patients may not need additional treatment, and they can move directly into the monitoring supported by periodic ctDNA testing. On top, instead, if MRD is detected, then only the patients who have still minimal residual disease then will undergo adjuvant treatment. And in this ideal pathway, also the supportive care is comprehensive in the pathway and supports basically the patients. When we move into the monitoring phase, but also in the recurrence phase, what happens is that ctDNA helps track if cancer is returning. And just in case this is happening, then they restart the treatment. Otherwise, they continue into a more less frequent visits, always with the support of ctDNA. So as you can see, with this ideal pathway, there is a reduced toxicity. There is less time also spent in the hospital because the ctDNA test is just a blood test and also can be taken in a local hospital, and the results can be shared, can be sent into centralized centers where the analysis is carried, and at the same time also would improve the quality of life of patients, and as well in the ultimately also to the survival rate. And so in this ideal pathway also on the stakeholder side, we really believe in a much more coordination and support through the pathway with patients and patients and caregivers together with the doctors being able to take a more informed decisions, also thanks to the results of the ctDNA testing. So if we go now to the next slide, I will just recap the key outcome of the healthcare pathway. So using the ctDNA after curative treatment, of course, bring some benefits compared to a current pathway based on imaging, and these benefits is the fact that patients and clinicians can make better informed choices and avoid unnecessary side effects. Also, ctDNA helps determine when there is no need of additional treatment and when there is the need of restarting or adjust the therapy. And cancer can be detected earlier than scans, and we don't need to wait for the symptoms to arise. And this, of course, enables early action and also reduces burden with fewer hospital visits, a simple blood collection, and lower costs, and of course, for the patients, better quality of life. And if you prefer to continue and discover more, please also check the material, the current ideal and healthcare pathway, and continue also to follow the other webinars that will focus on the topic. And I will now hand over to the most important part, that is the panel discussion. And Osiomen panelists, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Chiara and Klaus, for explaining the project and the ideal healthcare pathway. I hope you all found it informative. We will now hear from the panelists on what their hopes are for the project and the ideal healthcare pathway. We will begin with some members of the Patient Advisory Board, also known as the PAB, to tell us from the patient perspective, what is one challenge that stood out to them in the current pathway that they hope to solve as PAB members in order to achieve the adoption of the ideal healthcare pathway. Nicolene, over to you to open the floor.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it's the most important thing is that we go from one size fits all to having a look at the situation of every single patient. And so this gives us the opportunity to have a more personalized approach. And so that's why, from a patient advocate's point of view, we need this kind of reliable, validated method to monitor MRD. And I think with this project, we are doing an important step forward. And so this gives us the possibility that patients are treated in a way where they only receive the amount of therapy they need, nothing more, nothing less. And so that this matters because every treatment has so many side effects, even long-term side effects. And with this approach, we can avoid them wherever possible. And this is, for me, the most important thing, besides all the other things. But this is, as a start, this is really important for patients.
Thank you very much, Nicolene. Indeed, it's not one size fits all. We will now move on to Lasma to please share her perspectives.
Yeah, I completely agree what Nicolene just said. And as a colorectal cancer survivor, I can add that adjuvant chemotherapy for colorectal cancer can come with very severe side effects, and some of them, like fatigue, neuropathy, or brain fog, can last long after the treatment is over. And honestly, for me, this part of the treatment was the hardest one in the whole treatment journey, because I had severe infections, multiple infections, lowered immunity. I lost a lot of weight. I experienced peripheral neuropathy and terrible sensitivity to cold because I underwent this treatment during Latvian winter and early spring. So yeah, it made it even worse. And yes, because this treatment is so toxic, I really believe that we need a more precise way to understand who really needs this treatment and who might not need it. And I've heard also other colorectal cancer patients share the same concerns. And besides, the more individualized and carefully evaluated pathway could also help to make a big difference for long-term quality of life as well. For example, during my surgery, I got a temporary ileostomy that was supposed to be reversed within 5 to 6 weeks, but unfortunately, due to some inflammation in surgery site, it wasn't possible to do it in this little time frame between surgery and the beginning of adjuvant chemotherapy. And that's why in my case, I spent 6 months with stoma instead of those 6 weeks initially planned. And now we know that the longer the time spent with stoma is, the higher is the risk of developing severe long-term bowel issues, which can significantly affect quality of life for years. And for some patients, and I think I am one of them, for the rest of their lives, will have to live with these bowel issues. And that's why I really hope that the new, more precise pathway will make it possible to assess more individually if and when this adjuvant chemotherapy is truly needed, and when it might make more sense to prioritize other strategies like quality of life preserving strategies. And I think finding this balance between effective treatment and long-term quality of life for patients is very, very essential. And I see that this test might be helpful to do that.
Thanks a lot, Asma, for sharing your perspective as a survivor. Indeed, side effect from treatment is a big issue for patients, and a scenario where this can be more where treatment can be more targeted and precise would be ideal.
Yes, exactly.
Now we will move on to Maria Luisa Pagano to share her perspective.
I had to open the microphone. Sorry again. So thank you for inviting Pancreatic Cancer Europe to bring in the perspectives of pancreatic cancer patients. So I would like to start saying that unfortunately, pancreatic cancer is still a very neglected disease because we have a very high mortality rate, very poor early diagnosis, poor investments in researching for new treatments opportunities, and above all, disparities among European countries in assessing treatment and cares opportunities. So survivorship is a very low rate, is about over the 5 years 5 years a survivor is below the 10%. So survivorship is difficult in this disease. And in addition to that, pancreatic cancer incidence is on the increase. So we expect by 2030 to be the second leading cause of death related to cancer. So is indeed an urgent matter, a very high unmet needs in oncology. So pancreatic cancer is definitely a very difficult illness to treat. And for patients, the major difficulties in the current pathway of care, in our opinion, is the equal access to timely care opportunities. And this varies a lot according to the European countries where patient lives, and even in a country varies from region to regions. So we definitely need to support the patients in accessing timely care opportunities. So any innovations that can improve the patient's outcomes is more than welcome. And I'm sure that the GuideMRD project and the test, the ctDNA test, will help pancreatic cancer patients in getting a better care, more personalized care, and will support their quality of life and above all, help them in living longer. I would like also to remind you that in the treatment of pancreatic cancer, we are not advancing a lot in providing patients with new treatment opportunities. You should imagine that the last very promising treatment was developed 15 years ago. So since about 15 years, we are not having new treatments opportunities for patients, pancreatic cancer patients. So this is a very high disparities compared to other cancers, and we really call for the implementations of new innovations and to provide patients with a possibility to survive. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Maria, for emphasizing the urgency of this matter and the need to accelerate patients' access to innovative solutions. Having heard from the voices of patients and patient advocates in the project, let's now hear from the scientific coordinator on what he is hoping this project will help change in the healthcare system. Dr. Klaus.
Yeah, I definitely hope that this project will totally change the way we will treat cancer patients in the future. I mean, the detection of minimal residual disease, if it's precise and accurate, allows to distinguish between patients who need additional therapy besides surgery and those patients that might be cured by surgery alone. And this is actually a dream. I started my career 35 years ago with exactly that dream and that question. Can we ever have an instrument by a blood test that allows us to really say, is a patient cured by the surgical treatment alone, or does the patient require additional therapy? And if we could achieve that within the next 3 to 4 years, that would be a big breakthrough in cancer diagnosis with very, very severe implementations for cancer therapy.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Now we will hear from the project co-leader, Luigi, who also brings the industry perspective to share with us what his contributions are towards supporting the adoption of the ideal pathway.
Yeah, thank you very much for offering us this opportunity to bring our own perspective as industry, as project co-leader. So first of all, I would like to emphasize at the level of the consortium how this innovation, breakthrough innovation. Sorry, I think there is a microphone over. So this breakthrough innovation. Is that okay? Yeah. So I was saying how this breakthrough innovation really require very strong collaboration across the industry. And so I think I want to emphasize how the IHI program as a whole and the Gadamer project in particular provide that very, very unique neutral space where industry can collaborate together, the pharmaceutical industry and the diagnostic industry. And so this is really important for us as project leaders together with Klaus, that we ensure that this collaboration is smooth and effective, that we take into consideration all of the contribution from the different partners, but then that we work together towards our ambitious goal as industry, academic partner, and patients, that to then get to the dream, that realization that Klaus was alluding to. If I zoom out a little bit and talk a little about the broader contribution for industry, I think the healthcare pathway work has enabled us to gather a lot of important insight, and a couple of elements stood out. So, for example, it's important that we continue to build and strengthen the confidence that patients, physicians have to use the tests. And also then that this confidence is same for the regulatory authorities and the payers, so that they recognize the value of this innovation so that it can be incorporated in any healthcare system. So I think related to the access component that was highlighted, this is very critical. And I think we really, as industry, we need to continue to invest in generating data at the level of the performance of the test, of how they apply in the clinical to have impact on patient outcomes, and then in the real world to support the value demonstration. The second aspect I think I want to emphasize is about scale up. I think as industry, we have the capabilities, we have the resources to, we are organizations that work across borders. So we definitely need to continue to invest in scaling up innovation, in bringing pilots to broader demonstration, to bring a demonstration in certain tumor types to other tumor types, and also to continue to support the education, the training, and the engagement with all of the stakeholders that then will enable this innovation to reach any physician and any patient, irrespective of where they are.
Thank you so much, Luigi, for sharing your insights and especially highlighting the multi-stakeholder approach to the project. Last but not least, we will hear from our special guest, Tanya Spanic, to share with us what she thinks is needed to bridge the project's work with the broader patient community.
Yes, first of all, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here with you. As someone who personally lived the experience of cancer and now the patient advocate in this field, I think that this is very important what we are seeing now. We see also a lot about ctDNA in different perspectives, but what we need is actually the clinical validation of those tests and the really clinical meaningful usefulness. Where and how do we fit them? And building this over and across different cancer types is what we need most. We heard what previous patient advocates have said, and unfortunately, the ones that we've been diagnosed so many years ago, fortunately still alive, we can see this progress. But going back from the patient perspective and personalization of the treatment, that one treatment doesn't fit everybody, which is amazing, but how to make it even more precise. And as we heard, if we can achieve the cure or the minimal burden of the disease only after one particular treatment, either the surgery or the previous combination of the treatment, is amazing. That patients are not getting additional treatment if it is not needed. Of course, if it's needed, we accept it and we take it, but that we are not overtreated if it's not necessary. And getting this from maybe some cancers that are not so good in prognosis, as we heard from the colleague from pancreatic cancers, it's even more amazing. And that we can learn across the different localizations and share experience. This is another point that we need to collaborate even more, that we don't have to repeat all the tests or all trials in every single localization of the tumors, but that we should learn more across and from each other and help as many patients as possible across the globe. Of course, we are really happy that this is happening here in Europe and also in this area of the world, but that we are thinking also broader and thinking about the patients all around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's an honor to have Tanya with us today, given the great work she has done in breast cancer patient advocacy and to share her recommendations with us. All right, now it's time to hear from the audience. We now want to hear from you all. I see some of us have already started putting some questions in the chat. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, this is the time. Or if you would like to share your thoughts on the project or any recommendations for expanding our reach in terms of exchanging learnings with the broader patient community, other kinds of communities, we would be happy to hear your thoughts on that. So feel free to just digitally raise your hands and we will call on you to speak. Okay, while we wait for people who are going to remove their shyness coats, I'll just quickly start reading some of the questions that we have in the chat. We had a question from Martina asking, what are the options for testing for MRD? My mom has undergone a surgery for border resectable pancreatic cancer, but received a SR1 margin. So currently we are going through surveillance, but I'd like to test her properly. So it's not only monitoring CEA and CA19-9 markers and imaging scars. So what are the options for testing for MRD? Would anyone like to answer this?
Well, maybe I can jump in quickly here. I guess that's exactly the question that we address in the Guide MRD project. We have several tests that are available in the market, and they claim that they can detect MRD, but we really test them now, and we do a benchmarking of the tests side by side to really see which of those tests are most accurate in pancreatic, lung, and colorectal cancer. So by the end of this project, we hopefully have a clear answer to this very important question. But right now, the answer is that this question is still under investigation.
Thanks, Klaus. Okay, we have another question from Vivian. What is your advice when it comes to self-advocacy to ensure that your own cancer journey mirrors the most ideal pathway? Do you proactively ask your oncology team about MRD tests? Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask as you're going through the journey. Would anyone like to answer this?
Yes, I would like to comment on this. We, as a Pancreatic Cancer Europe, we strongly advise patients to ask directly questions to the medical team. And we recently, we will shortly, that will be tomorrow, we will launch a booklet on treatment opportunities in pancreatic cancer, where we list key questions that patients can ask to the medical team supporting their journey. But yes, proactivity is definitely one of the key issues to be informed and ask the medical team to do the test. This is what we advise the patients to do.
Thank you, Maria. Tanya, you have an additional comment?
Yes, if I may add here, I think that this is a very important part. Of course, you advocate for yourself. You are the one, especially as a patient or a caregiver. But on the other hand, especially in pancreatic cancer and also for other cancers, we have to be aware that we should be treated in the centers that have experience with those cancers, that we are not treated in some centers outside of this expertise, especially with this kind of the diagnosis. And then don't forget in Europe about the possibility of cross-border treatment. If something is not available in our countries, we can look outside of our countries, and maybe also to look for the projects like this is, if we can get included into this. I'm not talking about everybody getting this opportunity, but just for particular cases, if we are eligible to look abroad, this maybe also refer to organizations like Pancreatic Cancer Europe or your national organizations and look for the options.
Thank you, Tanya.
There's just one thing I like to add, because I can say this for Germany and other European countries, as far as I know, because this is also an aim we have in this project, is that it's not reimbursed for everyone. It's not available. This is something we must be really clear. It's something we want to go to, but we are not there. I'm sorry.
No worries, Nicolene. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else want to add any additional comments to answer this question?
I just want to reiterate Nicolene's statement that reimbursement is, of course, the bottleneck, for widespread clinical use. And we are also working on that in the European Liquid Biopsy Society, which is a real network of more than 100 institutions worldwide, particularly in Europe. And we are talking to the stakeholders to hopefully make that happen, because that is actually absolutely required for a widespread clinical implementation. So very important point.
Thanks, Klaus. Okay, we have another question from Christina. Will the ideal pathway work for pancreatic cancer today? Is it good enough?
Well, I think that Christina also asked the question, if we can treat earlier pancreatic cancer, is there a higher chance for cure? And the answer is simply yes. That's exactly what we want to do with the MRD project. We want to detect traces of cancer before there is a metastatic relapse, because if there's a metastatic relapse, there is very little chances for cure. But if we detect it now months earlier, and the tumor load is much lower, we have the hope that we can cure more patients. And that, of course, has to go along with the development of new treatments and new drugs for this tumor indication. But that's definitely the hope of MRD diagnostic, to find earlier that there is a certain development of relapse and really hit that tumor before it becomes a real metastatic disease. And yes, the chances are quite high that then the treatment works much better than waiting too long. Very good statement.
Thanks, Klaus. Anyone else wants to jump on this? Okay, we have another question on how can we ensure that liquid biopsies will be available for the CEE region, famously last to benefit from innovation in Europe?
Since I'm from this part of Europe, maybe I can jump in. What I believe is really important also for us as patient advocates is that we work together with the healthcare professionals, with scientists, and with clinicians after this is developed. I really believe, and also in this cancer community, what we are doing, that it's really unethical that we don't have this for our patients once we have the treatment available or the protocols available, but we don't have available tests, diagnostic tests regarding what do we need. And this is where we can really advocate and work together to show our policymakers why this is important and why we need this, how this will influence the consequences, less expensive treatment, more active patients after the treatment, longer survivalship, and everything. Because unfortunately, politicians or policymakers sees only numbers, how much the test costs, but they don't see how much this will benefit after we have it. So in this field, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, where we don't have access right away, like maybe in Western countries or in some more developed countries, we really have to work together and prove them why we need this and why this is important, not just for the healthcare budgets, but for the whole community and society. And of course, we have to learn from other countries what they have available already.
But also, if I can add on that, I think that the Guide MRD project is also looking at that in the sense that through the work of a collaborative consortium, also multi-stakeholder consortium, but also including discussions already, early discussions with, for example, regulatory bodies, or we are also, we developed also an awareness brief on the project and on the benefit for policymakers. And we also mapped the stakeholders involved and where is the struggle, which are the challenges, which are the gaps in the implementation. I think starting this work really at the beginning, together with the development of the project, will ensure that once we find, the best suitable test, this is already together with the thinking of implementing it in a more equal way across Europe. Of course, this will require, as you said, Tanya, a lot of advocacy, because even though we do this work, it's not necessarily that then it will be available in all countries. But what I can say is that really we are moving into this direction already, because we know that the results of these projects will be good if then it will be followed by an implementation.
Thanks, Kara. Maria, yes, go ahead.
Yes, another comment on this is so we rely hope in the new HTA regulation, so the health technology assessment that has a goal to speed up the procedures for approving, at least at European level, to approve the new drugs or new devices for curing cancers, all cancers. And so we really hope that for pancreatic cancer, so the process would support the introductions of the new drugs or protocols, so in a very quick way, so to help patients to use it and to save their lives.
Yeah. Christina, would you like to take a moment to perhaps express your concerns? We would love to hear your voice. You're really engaging with us in the chats.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge with pancreatic cancer for sure, because first of all, if you get a relapse, reoccurrence, it's almost a death sentence today. So when I speak to physicians, well, they wouldn't say that, but they would say there are no studies that actually say that treating earlier, starting a couple of months earlier, which would be possible with a liquid biopsy that tells that there is ctDNA in the blood. They say, well, there are no studies that shows that starting earlier is a good thing, so we won't do it. And they also say, what should we do if you see that there is ctDNA in the blood? There is no recommendations. We would not know how to treat, so we wouldn't do it. Not even if you pay for this treatment for the ctDNA yourself. So there is today, from my own personal observations, no way forward. And at the same time, there is so much good things done with the research from what you're telling us, but it's not out there in the clinic. But it's no way forward. It's like a closed door, and that's very annoying because it's of course logically, if you notice that there is a problem, that there are cancer cells in your blood, it must be easier to treat then than waiting for progress. So it's a big concern. That's what I'm trying here to ask about. How to approach it.
Thanks for
Thank you
sharing.
very much, Christina. I think you mentioned a very important issue that usually, in medicine, and that's of course for good reasons, doctors want to see studies which are interventional studies. So a study where we detect the MRD and then we give the treatment earlier and then we show that the patient has a benefit from it. And this is exactly a study that we also plan in Guide MRD. Once we know what is the best way to detect MRD and what is the safest way to detect it, we will go the next step in implementing clinical studies that are interventional and that really address this obvious question. However, there is an intermediate time, right, where you say, yes, it is logical that treating earlier is better, but the doctors are also right by saying, yeah, there are so many things logical, but if we don't have the clinical data, we are not willing to do it. So I would say both sides are right in a certain way. You cannot say who's right or wrong, but I guess that the patients, in my view, and that's why we are happy that we are having this event, the patients should be involved in this decision making. And also in this decision-making process, right? Not just to be told whatever the doctors tell them. So I think that's why I'm very happy that we have this discussion. sometimes the situations are complex, but we can find solutions if we really talk to each other and work together on these solutions.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Klaus.
I understand what you're saying, Klaus, and the work you're doing is very important. It's just that it's very slow to get all these evidences in place, and maybe everything doesn't need to be 100% perfect. Maybe start using it and learn as you go, and that would be a good approach in the clinic.
Sure, and then you would also gather real-world data, and if you have a good register, you can learn from these real-world data. We are also thinking and talking in that direction. You're absolutely right.
Good.
But I see hands
Thanks.
from Marie-Louisa and from Tanya, so I will stop talking.
Tanya, go ahead. You had your hand up
Yes,
first.
exactly. This is what is frustrating for patients today, is that we see and we wait for what is coming. And I think that this is the great point, and especially in, I'll maybe repeat myself again, in pancreatic cancers or in rare cancers, that we have to inform patients to go to really specialized units where, when sometimes doctors there, or if they are included in the trials, to do more. For breast cancer, where I come from, it really doesn't matter so much because we have breast units very available. But in pancreatic or rare cancers, it's even more important that you go to the really specialized units to look for the new opportunities, to join the trials, and to advocate, as we just heard from Dr. Klaus, and that's amazing, collect real-world data, because we don't need randomized controlled trial for every single thing. We will not get it. But we have to harmonize the data even within Europe, start collecting real-world data, and improve the lives of patients today, not just in the future. And with more and more we talk about it, maybe finally this will move a little bit faster. And in all cancers, not in just some specific types or some subtypes, we have to work really together, connect Europe, and start doing this to improve as soon as possible.
I would like to comment on Christina comment exactly. So I see 2 points here. One is the patient's involvement also in the national HTA process, where the patient's point of view could speed up the process of approving the innovations, no? Could be drugs or devices. And the other point that I see patients advocates or organizations can do is to share scientific information among healthcare professionals, and also to educate them somehow, to provide webinars, information sessions on the novels, on the news that we could have from the scientific world. And this is exactly what the Pancreatic Cancer Europe likes to do, to support the spread of the informations in the community, to accelerate the process of introducing new drugs and new protocols in the treatment of pancreatic cancer.
Thanks so much, Maria. We are getting closer to the end of the webinar, but thank you all for sharing your concerns and your insights. To close the session, we will now have an audience poll to see how confident you feel regarding the impact of this project and how likely you are to recommend this webinar to someone else. So please reply to the poll, which will soon show on your screen. Thanks a lot for participating in this webinar and sharing your quick feedback. Interesting. Good news is we don't have anyone who is not confident about this impact of the project, so that's good. Thank you so much. Just to, if you would like to share further details about this webinar, about, the knowledge you've learned, what you've learned today, we would like to give you the opportunity to do so via our feedback form, which will be open until December. Next slide, please. You can access this feedback form through the link in the chat or by scanning the QR code. Don't worry if it's too quick for you now. We will still share the slide deck with all the links and information with you. To stay engaged with us between now and the next event, please join our community group chat on precision medicine signups. You can join by clicking the link or also scanning the QR code. We will have other virtual events next year. We'll be happy to see you again. Even in the community group chat, feel free to ask more questions and share more of your thoughts and concerns, and follow up with us on what are the recent updates from this project. To stay informed on our general updates, our social media campaigns, we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and to subscribe to our newsletter. And if you have any questions or need to speak to someone about the project, feel free to connect with us. In the next slide, you'll see our emails. You can contact any of the following PAB coordinators. PAB, those are the Patient Advisory Board coordinators, which includes myself, Kiara, and Anna, who's not with us today, but perhaps in the next event, you'll see her. So thank you so much for your attention and engagement today. I wish you all a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.